So I moved to Slovakia for love, thinking that I was skipping the hard part of expat life. But the truth is, I wasn't. And if you're thinking about doing the same thing, then watch this video first. So I moved to Slovakia, and with my partner being Slovak, well, I thought naturally this is going to be easier. Because she spoke Slovak, it meant that, well, I didn't have to, or I didn't need to worry so much. So she was able to help me so much with the bureaucracy, the legal stuff, setting up a bank account, these sort of things. And, well, even speaking to neighbors and stuff like this. But the problem here is that, well, it causes you to be overly reliant. It causes you to just think, well, I don't need to worry too much about it because I've got a safety net. I've got someone who can help me, who can speak the language. So it almost makes you become complacent. And so I was having a lot of stagnation with learning Slovak because, well, I could always default to English often, or she could help me. But then the problem here with that is that, well, you become overly reliant on that person, and that can cause some tension and some stress. It showed me that, well, I needed to take more action. I needed to really focus myself and try and learn myself. Otherwise, well, I'm going to be putting too much pressure on my partner, and I'm going to be making things more difficult. And also, she's not always going to be there. So I realized that, well, I needed to try and start speaking and making as much effort as possible with the language and with trying to acclimatize, so that even when she was there, I was used to making that effort. But with that and the fact that you won't have friends, you won't have a social circle, you only have your partner, is that, well, you can kind of become a bit of a social shadow. Because the thing is, when you move abroad for love, you're joining your partner's already established life. And so you have to start from scratch. There was often times where I wanted to go out. There was a weekend and I wanted to do something, and, well, my partner, she didn't fancy it. And that's okay, but it's just, if you want to go out and do something but you don't know people, and the only person who does is your partner and they don't want to go, then you kind of feel isolated. And that's how it felt for me. I remember feeling isolated and feeling this on weekends, especially on weekends. And whilst you get to join her social circle, you'll become Ricardo the boyfriend, so to speak, like it was for me, which I was fine with, and I absolutely loved her friends and family. But you are Ricardo the boyfriend. They're not your friends, so to speak. So unfortunately, if she's not going to be there, then you don't have people necessarily to hang around with. So it made me realize that I needed to find people. I needed to find hobbies that I was interested in. I needed to find groups where I could just be me and where I didn't have to rely on someone else. I could just go to these off my own back. But then if it takes time to build up that friendship, to build up that social circle, then for a while you're going to be lonely. I definitely was lonely for a while. Maybe between 6 and 12 months. Even though I knew people, I still felt incredibly isolated. And that's difficult because, I mean, for me, I didn't want to really share that I was unhappy, because I didn't want her to think that it meant I regret the move or I'm not happy with being with her, because that was not true. I was very happy to be with her and I was glad we were able to live together. But I did feel unhappy because I didn't have that social circle yet. And I'm quite a sociable person, so I want to be engaging with people. I want to be talking with people. And because I didn't have that, it was difficult. And it makes you feel incredibly isolated. It makes you feel incredibly lonely. Even though you know someone, you know at least one person. But when you're relying on them for your social circle because you don't know other people yet, that can feel isolating, especially if they're not available, if they don't want to do things. Then, well, you're stuck until you make friends. So this made me realize that I really needed to get friends as soon as possible. And if I was to go back, then that's definitely what I would have done way quicker. But of course, until we have that social circle and until we have other people that we can rely upon, then we are going to be overly reliant on our partner for pretty much everything. They're not just your partner, they're not just your best friend, they're your tour guide, they're your translator, they're your administrative assistant, they're absolutely everything. And that can cause a lot of stress, a lot of burden. You know, you're either going to bottle things up, and this happens sometimes with me. I didn't say, like, if I was, feeling low or whatever, because I didn't want to burden my partner. And I was also thinking, well, I'm also already overly dependent on her, which made me feel guilty because I didn't want to be overly dependent on her. So I think this is the key thing to realize here, and the lesson is that we need to try and find other people, right? And so to build on the last point is that trying to widen our social circle, trying to put ourselves out there, and also in terms of like things that we need to do, like bureaucracy, different things like this when you're moving abroad, to not only rely on one person. So what I did was I was able to eventually, I started to make friends and friends who spoke Slovak. So I would also speak to them and ask them for help on certain matters so that I wasn't always going to my partner. In general, it means that I'm not always burdening her or stressing her. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? I was, offloading to other people as well. I was asking for help from different sources. But also another thing here is that if we learn the language more, then maybe we're able to do so ourselves. But if we're not at that level yet, don't burden one person with it. So I think this can alleviate a lot of pressure and alleviate a lot of concerns between the two of you if you try and ask for help for other people as well. And of course, you are going to miss your friends back home as well. You're going to miss your family back home. You're going to miss your routines that you're used to, which takes us to homesickness. And now because of this, because of missing family, friends, everything, missing our routines, missing our day-to-day life, it can maybe feel like we regret the move. And that's hard, again, to share because your partner, you don't want your partner to think that you regret being with them or you regret the situation. It's more that you just miss people. And so it was difficult for me to share homesickness. I think it was more so the guilt spiral and the loneliness, but it's also difficult sometimes to share about the homesickness and you want to see family and friends. But I think the lesson for me here is that you can build routines, and this is what I did. I would often FaceTime my parents and everything back home. I would call them maybe twice a week, sometimes once a week, but sometimes more. And that really helped. That made me feel connected to them. Although I couldn't see them properly in person, it did help to see their faces even on my phone. I think the thing is across all of these is that you need to take control. You need to take action, take initiative into building your life. And I think this is where, when you are the trailing partner, if you will, when you are moving for your partner, you can feel almost like a passenger in your life, right? And that's not a negative thing to your partner. It's just when you're moving abroad, they are already aware of the situation. They've already got their routines, their patterns, their everything. They've already created a life for themselves there, but you haven't done so yet. So you almost just add into theirs without trying to do the work to build your own, which then can make us feel like maybe long distance was easier. Maybe long distance was better because we haven't built up our own life. We haven't built up the routines. We haven't built up everything. We've simply traded our independence, if you will, for proximity with our partner. And this is an interesting one because for my situation, we were seeing each other every couple months and really making the most of that time. You're going to be really happy to see each other, right? So you're going to be in a certain frame of mind. But then naturally, when you change that to you're living together, suddenly you'll experience the happy moments, you'll experience the good, the bad, everything. And you're trying to also adapt to how you are with living with each other. Because let's face it, we all have our own quirks, we all have our own ways of doing things. And when you're not used to living with someone, that can be quite hard to adapt to. And it can be quite hard to adapt and suddenly realize, oh, we're seeing each other every day now. And I was really looking forward to that. And it was a really good experience. And what I noticed is that whilst it might be a transition period to try and get used to these things, for me personally, I definitely know I don't really want to do a long distance ever again. I don't want to do long distance as part of a relationship again. I think it would only be under certain circumstances that I would do it. But in general, I don't think I would, just because I think there's something so special about building a life together and living together. And a long distance relationship can kind of have a lot of the perks, a lot of the great things about being a relationship without the kind of difficult parts, let's say. So in a way, you kind of, you're not building a life together. You've got your life, they've got their life, and occasionally they merge, which for me is not what I see in a relationship, but each their own. Whilst it did come with a lot of difficulty and a lot of things that did put pressure and strain on the relationship, I am so glad I moved abroad, and I'm glad I moved abroad for love. I'm glad I moved for my partner, but it wasn't easy. And I think, and this is what I wanted to show in this video, because often we just show the glitz, the glamour, and the greatness, the great, beautiful side of moving abroad, and how moving abroad for love can be great, which it is, but there is a lot of difficulty with that. So I wanted to cover all aspects. But that being said, have you moved abroad for love? If so, what did you struggle with? Or maybe are you thinking about moving abroad? Whatever your situation, comment below and let me know your experiences and your thoughts. I'd love to see what you have to say on this matter. And that being said, if you've enjoyed this video, if it's been helpful, please do leave a like. And if you'd like to see more about the real side of living abroad, or you want to see what life is like in Slovakia, then consider subscribing, as I touch on many different aspects of moving abroad. That being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.